So I'm here in my room. I've got my computer on in front of me. I've got my microphone set up. There's a notepad open with notes about my podcast. It's time to rewind. It looks like they're on the 44th scene of Memento that starts in black and white at 93 minutes and 48 seconds, with Leonard talking on the phone about drug dealer Jimmy Grant's coming somewhere by himself, and ends at 99 minutes and 37 seconds with a Polaroid of Jimmy developing into color along with the rest of the scene. Hang on. Who is this?
Bubba, it's me, Lisa Leaheey from Rabbit Hole Podcast. Come on, you know me. I host a show called Between the Scares, and we talk about everything that Jason Blum and Blumhouse Productions have put out. Come on.
Oh, of course, although I prefer to be called Bubbawheat. And who is this?
Bubbawheat, it's me, it's Eric, the other co-host, and my memory is not so great because I'm used to everything being in color and everything's in black and white today. I'm very confused.
Of course. Well, thanks for coming back and being a part of this show this whole time. And yeah, we're coming up on the end. We just have 2 more episodes left, and because these are really, connected, we get this transition at the end of this black and white scene where it transitions from black and white into color without a real cut that joins these 2 timelines. So of course, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to end with just the 3 of us, the same way that we began. And I sent you all a group of pictures, and I'll be sharing those in the Facebook group as well, of like how these end scenes really mirror the I guess it's not the opening scene, but the first real forward color scene. And so, yeah, I think, the cyclical nature of this movie, it's perfect to end where we started.
Absolutely. I agree.
And we might as well, like we usually do, just jump into the scene. And I feel like the opening of this scene is very economical, where where Leonard really gives a lot of information pretty quickly about who Jimmy Grant is, even though that he's a character that we already know of because of his connection to Natalie, and that he's coming to this place by himself without Natalie.
I think it's good because you have this balance, it's not heavy with exposition. It's not, oh yeah, this guy, oh yeah, he goes to this bar, and oh yeah, he's got this girlfriend. It's not this whole thing. It's enough for us to, like, if you weren't paying attention during the movie, let's refresh your memory real quick and make sure you know who this actually is. And, it's just the right amount, I think.
Yeah, it's a big exposition sentence, though. It's like it sums the whole thing up of what you need to know, of tying everything that's gone on, but it's literally just one sentence, and it does the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure somebody had to argue with him to get him to do it. Because I'm sure somebody Nolan does not like to explain his stuff. And I'm sure somebody was like, yeah, but you need to probably I don't want to. Tough on them. They should be paying attention would be the argument I would put out there. And I'm not some famous, brilliant director. But, I'm sure somebody had to say to him, there are people who are not going to be paying attention. And, I don't know what they would be doing back then in 2000, because nowadays it's simply, well, they're going to be on their phone during your whole movie. Back then, that wouldn't have been a thing. So who knows? So, you have to wake up the kids in the back who are not paying attention.
Yeah. And we also get the information in this that, and I know that we, especially Lisa and I, have talked about where Teddy was calling from.
Mm-hmm.
And here we do get the information that he was calling from the lobby. Now, do you think that he's been calling from the lobby the entire time, or do you think just this last phone call is from the lobby?
I think it's this last phone call, because he has to actually now get him to this location, right? Like before, it was a lot of just passing discussions. There's no way that Teddy has been standing in this lobby talking about the things he's been talking about with Bert right there. There is no way. Maybe he was in his car. Maybe he was out somewhere nearby in a parking lot. But I just can't believe that he would be standing there and talking to him as a cop. Like what do? You can't do that with Bert standing right there. If what we've learned about Bert is true, where Teddy tells us that Bert called Lenny in when he saw him taking a photo of the place. There's a scene early on with that. Oh no, it might be this one. Now that I think about it, it might actually be this scene coming up that we talk about later. But whatever it is, like the idea that he knows what's going on.
Yeah, especially because about a minute into this scene when Leonard goes down and sees Teddy and he says, Officer Gamble, and Teddy looks at Bert with a very concerned look on his face, like,
yeah,
I really didn't want that information said to this guy sitting here, so this has to be the only phone call he makes from the lobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before he comes down to the lobby, there is this move that Leonard does, and he does this several times in these last couple scenes that I love, where and it's something that I kind of do myself a lot, where he holds the Polaroid in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's he holds it with his teeth. I usually go just a little bit different. I usually try not to put anything I hold with my mouth all the way inside my mouth.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the teeth is probably, I guess that's the safest place. You're going to get the smallest amount of, mouth to item contact, I think. Like if you're using your lips, you're going to be pressing your lips down on this thing and, coming up with more contact. But, because I think I'm more of a teeth person. I love that we're discussing this right now.
Gripping with the teeth means less saliva on the item.
This is what I'm saying. Like we actually have reasons for why we grip things the way we do with our mouths, which is a conversation you wouldn't think we'd be having, but Yeah,
I usually try to roll my lips over my teeth so it's like the dry part of my lips and not the more inside saliva-ridden part of my lips. But yeah, but I had to point it out because there's at least two other times during these last two scenes where we see Leonard holding a Polaroid in the exact same way. Yeah. And it's also...
Did you feel validated about the way you hold things?
A little bit. And also... I think it's also worth noting that the way he holds it's always picture side down, so that the camera only sees the black backing. So we never really see exactly which Polaroid he is holding in his mouth. We just see that he's holding a Polaroid.
I wonder if that's muscle memory of him doing it that way so no one else can see which Polaroid he's holding in his mouth.
Oh, that's a good point. I've never actually considered this situation of why does he actually hold it that way specifically, or is that just the way it landed? It's never occurred to me at all.
If he does it that way every time in the movie, yeah, 50-50 chance, sure. Yeah. You could flip a coin 5 times in a row and land tails all 5 times in a row. It could happen, but the odds aren't with you.
It could happen 167 times in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead. How's that for a random English teacher reference?
I love it. I gotta watch that movie again.
I love it. It's the reason I teach Hamlet.
I think I've seen it. I think I've seen it once or twice, and it was in high school English. Was the first time I saw it.
Me too. Yes, my senior English teacher, and now I do so many things that she did for us. So anyway, we're off topic again. This is something that happens quite a bit with me, Eric. You've noticed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing that I noticed is this before he comes to the lobby. This is really the first time in these black and white scenes that we see Leonard exiting his motel room, because this entire time we've been stuck in this claustrophobic motel room, and especially towards the end, the anxiety has been it's really kind of been bearing down on us with this claustrophobic element. And then as soon as he walks out the door, we get this music cue, which is this more mellow, haunting melody, which is very different from the very anxiety-inducing music that we typically hear in these scenes.
Well, and not only that, but we're we're repeating something from an earlier color scene when he is walking down this exact hallway before going into the lobby at one point when he's got Jimmy's clothes on. And he does that sort of awkward adjustment of the jacket because it's too big. So now, we're seeing him do this same exact walk, but in different clothes, in a different frame of mind.
Yeah, and there is going to be a lot of mirrored elements from those early color scenes. That they are very intentional, and we'll get into them more here in just a little bit. But before we get to that, we get we get the creation of Teddy's Polaroid.
Mm-hmm. Finally, we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the last pieces to fall into place. Not quite the last one, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and I didn't notice before, and definitely haven't talked about it, but he's posing in front of Leonard's blue truck.
Mm-hmm. He is.
And he, not only that, but he moves, because he was going to just take a picture of him out in the open, but then he's like, let's get not here. Why do you think that he says that? Do you think that it's, maybe a little bit more out of the way? Maybe they're still kind of in view.
Totally in view. Yep.
But why does that matter? Because I had the same question. I mean, why does it matter if someone sees these two randos having one random guy on the street taking a Polaroid of another guy? I mean, all he does is duck over about 20 feet over. I wasn't really sure why it matters if anyone did see him take his picture.
I mean, my thinking is that, Teddy as Officer Gamble is super cautious about who he is seen with. Because if he is a cop, if he is undercover, or whatever it is that he's doing, whatever game he's playing here, he knows that Leonard is dealing with dangerous people, and he knows that Jimmy has dangerous associates. So these are people who could come at them, and so if he sees them together, then it's more of a problem, right? Because Teddy's running around and making these deals. Natalie talks about how some guy came in looking for him and said his name was Teddy, and she knows that Jimmy goes to meet some guy named Teddy. If somebody knows what Teddy looks like and then sees Leonard with Teddy, because they know who Leonard is, it's going to create this. So I think it's just an overabundance of caution. And I can see, certainly, is it likely? Probably not. But somebody could see them together. Bert could see them together. Bert's the one who's the eyes and ears of the place.
Yeah, that's actually where I was going to go. And I was kind of looking through it again. They don't hang a hat on it or anything, but I do kind of get the feeling that maybe whenever he was taking a picture, it was potentially visible from the hotel lobby. So if Bert did happen to be looking out, he might have seen him taking a picture of Teddy and possibly clued that into Jimmy because he is connected to Jimmy.
Okay, and I guess if Leonard has a reputation now around town of that guy with the memory who's always taking Polaroids, if someone sees him taking a Polaroid of Teddy, where now Teddy is now connected to that guy who has the memory problems.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can't exactly tell, but I think, maybe they are just kind of going to the other side of the wall in this parking area.
Yeah. And I mean, this Teddy, I mean, I think we've commented on the goofiness of Teddy's photo before. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming he smiles goofy on purpose to somewhat make his face not quite so recognizable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly not a bright, sunny area, so I can't figure out why else otherwise.
Yeah. I also liked it's a very quick moment as they're walking to the parking area that that they show that Teddy's a litter bug and he just throws his coffee cup on the ground, which is exactly what Teddy would do.
I had the same exact note. It's like, this guy's so evil, he doesn't even throw his coffee cups in the garbage.
Yep. That's it. That's what he thinks of the area.
I guess, well, first, another question about the Polaroid. This can't possibly be the first time he's taken a Polaroid of Teddy, considering if everything we end up hearing in the rest of this movie is true, they've known each other for a while. So has he just lost or burned or otherwise misplaced the photos he has of Teddy from the past? Why does he not already have a Polaroid of Teddy that says, this is Teddy, the guy I know, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a really good point. And it's interesting to think about your possibilities. I think all of them could work. And knowing where Leonard goes by the end of this movie, it's interesting because if he's so angry with Teddy, why wouldn't what happens have happened sooner?
Yes.
I mean, this could be us digging a little too far, but
Mhm.
perhaps it did get misplaced because he talks about muscle memory, and you have to figure out that somewhere along the line he screwed up and realized, oh, I need to be doing this. Or he had that, monkeys typing Hamlet kind of thing where some brilliance shined through one day and he realized, oh, let me make this big paper map and let me hang stuff up and tape them to this. And I don't know, like you figure that all of the different failed systems in the past, maybe that Polaroid or those other Polaroids got lost to it. I don't know. It's a really interesting question, Eric.
Yeah, I think that he could have lost it because we do see him misplacing things all over the place. Like he loses his hotel key often. But I also think that there could be an element because Teddy is kind of working under the radar, and he's like working with Leonard at this point, but he's also trying to keep his distance with Leonard. So I wouldn't be surprised if Teddy has maybe, gotten his Polaroid, like made sure that Leonard didn't have his Polaroid at certain points in time, and now he's okay with it because, for one, that he doesn't want to raise suspicion about himself at this point, but also because he can tell that they're nearing the end game with this John G. So maybe it's okay that he has the Polaroid again now.
And then the one other thing I wanted to say about this part of the scene is, and I feel like it ties in with the fact that he says this right after he litters. Teddy's very nonchalant, considering about what they're about to do, what he's bringing Leonard about to do. And I'm going to get a little bit more into this in the next scene and then our next episode. But there's, Teddy as a psychopath, and the lack of emotion of he's so nonchalant as he's telling Leonard, all right, we're going to go here and you're going to meet this guy, when he knows what he's setting Leonard up to do. And he just completely has no remorse whatsoever.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that has to do with who they're going to find. And, like you've said, this is something that he's been doing for a while. And it's something, and I think you're right, like we'll talk about this more in depth with the next episode, but this idea that he has been steering Leonard towards certain people that generally wouldn't be totally missed, right? So like Natalie says,
undesirables.
People don't look too hard for people like Jimmy. Like it's this idea of, because he's guiding him, because he sees Jimmy as this terrible person who does awful things to people, he doesn't feel bad for him. I mean, and I think that's very purposefully done.
Yeah, and he also, as he's going, he says, "Hey, Lenny, make him beg." And
exactly.
Like, that's his line. And not only that, but again, talking about the mirroring, like not here, but whenever he does see, going back just a little bit, whenever he sees Leonard come in, he has a very similar, he has the Lenny in, kind of
yes, exactly.
in a very similar tone. Again, that mirrors the opening scene whenever whenever we're first introduced to Teddy.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and if you think about the way Dodd interacts with Leonard during my favorite scene in the whole movie, like, he has no problem shooting Leonard. None at all. And so, like, these are not people who are going to consider who they're taking out or who they're beating up. So I think that also fuels Teddy's disregard of, Jimmy's humanity.
Yeah, and I do also, want to point out that this, in this moment, Leonard does not correct him. And, he doesn't correct the whole Lenny. It's, he doesn't say I prefer to be called Leonard. And I think a lot of that is because Teddy is presenting himself as a very different character.
That's a good point.
So there's, this level of respect that Leonard is giving to Officer Gamble rather than Teddy, even though, he does directly instruct him not to write officer or lieutenant, it's just to write Teddy on the Polaroid. And he then adds the phone number. But there is this different level of respect because Teddy is presenting himself as a very different character than we see through the rest of the movie.
And the other side of this is, Leonard leaves that room with a scribbled down note describing an Officer Gamble. He doesn't have the Teddy post-it yet that we are used to him using all through the film. So there's no reason why, like Eric said, any possible previous Teddy Polaroid, that was a great alliteration, wouldn't have, I wish I could say I planned that, he wouldn't have something to look at. So even though Teddy certainly recognizes Leonard, I think he does that Lenny recognition thing, but Leonard has no clue who this guy is. There's no way he would recognize him. All he does, and you notice, he sees him, he glances down, and then it's like, oh, Officer Gamble, because he needed that cue to even think, oh, who am I meeting down here?
Yeah, exactly. And then, moving on into the scene, we get this slow pan in, and again, this is another one of those mirrored moments as the truck pulls into this abandoned building. And it's the exact same music cue, the exact same framing. The only difference is it's in black and white. And I really love that, that creating this cycle and I feel like I need to say it because of what this podcast is, but it's like this time loop where he's, literally repeating the same events over and over again, just without his knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this, after he walks in, we don't see it as much in the color scene because the framing is a little bit different where Leonard is blocking a bit more of the door. But I just think that this shot with him standing in the middle of this door frame in this decrepit hallway with the plastic and the backlight shining in is just gorgeous.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that.
Definitely.
Nothing else to add to it, but just saying that I agree.
yeah, same. I want to know why he's there with just a tire iron. I mean, he's there to kill the person he thinks killed his wife, and all he's got is a tire iron?
Yeah, I'm surprised that Jimmy doesn't come into this armed.
Yeah.
That is really true. Especially because he's meeting some random dude.
I mean, he's meeting Teddy, I guess. Maybe he, from Jimmy's perspective, Teddy never really presented himself as a potential threat. So he just kind of looked at this as just a standard drug deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so...
Yeah, but still, I mean if Jimmy's, comes across as a fairly successful drug dealer, so you have to assume that he's not stupid and
right.
Go in prepared. So even if he views Teddy as kind of a goof and it's just your run-of-the-mill standard drug deal, you would think he would always be armed.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on this one because whatever scenario I kind of work through in my head, it's really not smart. You would think, oh, maybe he's not armed because, he's got backup. No, he goes out into the middle of nowhere by himself. He's got this money in the trunk, we find out. And even if Teddy has spent weeks establishing himself as somebody, quote unquote, trustworthy, I still don't believe that Jimmy would have shown up unarmed.
Right.
It really is a big plot hole problem.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, especially you're a drug dealer with $200,000 in cash in the trunk and you don't have any sort of protection at all, not even a knife as far as we can tell.
Yeah, and it's not like there's a gun in the car because that never comes to, it's strange how all of this works.
Yeah, it's something that I never really put too much thought in until now, but yeah, I feel like this is really one of the first major plot holes that we've really hit upon in this movie, and I think in a way that's telling because and pretty much everything else does kind of hold up, and any other sort of faults you can chalk up to the unreliable narration sort of details. But yeah, this one, I think it is worth mentioning. Although I think that this scene would play out very different if Jimmy had been armed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Oh my God, there would have been no movie, or at least no second half.
Or it would have been like it would have been a longer fight scene, because now they have to have the struggle over the gun before you get to Leonard finally choking him.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And then as Jimmy pulls up in the Jag, we start to get these flashes of memory of Leonard's wife, and they're all just. I think it's interesting the way that they choose these memories, because kind of like how whenever Natalie asks him to remember his wife, these are all very just normal moments. These aren't like precious memories. These are just very simple memories of her just existing in different ways. But at the same time, there's this mirroring element where he's like kind of piecing together these little memories that fit in with what is happening on screen. Like whenever he goes to the window to look at Jimmy pulling up, he has this flash of memory of his wife walking to the window to look out the window.
Yeah, the editing in this sequence is just so pristine. I mean, it is so wonderfully put together. I mean, it's one of my favorite sequences to just look at, and the parallelism of it and just the structure of it is just so good. And he talked to Natalie, not Natalie. No, I think it was Natalie, where he talks about like the feel of a person. Like when you talk about how you remember somebody, and it's just those small moments. It's the way their hair swished, or it's the way they, adjusted their pajama pants, as they got into bed, or something like that. It's all these small little things. It's never those big precious moments like you were talking about.
Right. And like the second one we see is like her just leaning against it's a very different time and place. But again, like her motion mirrors Leonard's motion, as she just is kind of sitting there, and then she just turns her head, and then it cuts back to Leonard turning his head in the exact same way.
Yeah, it's just it's so good, such a good sequence.
Yeah, and then as again we get a third one as he's going up to the door, and again it's a different memory of his wife walking to the door to get ready to open it. And in the commentary, like Nolan talks about how it's like him kind of Frankensteining these memories in order to fit his current situation. Kind of like it's almost like he's bringing his wife into this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he wants her there for his revenge against her quote-unquote killer. Yep.
Yeah, and like the next one comes just a little bit later, like as he's about to attack Jimmy, with her turning around, or like the second time that he goes to attack Jimmy, like she turns around, like, hey, watch this. And then like the last one, as he's choking Jimmy out, is the kind of the darkest one, because in that situation, it's almost like the role becomes reversed. And it's the moment where she's in the shower curtain where she was being choked. So it's like, and on all the previous flashes of memory, she was there with Leonard. But then the last one, the role gets reversed, and it's almost like Leonard is the one choking his wife. And it's this role reversal, which I think, we get more into in this scene. But this is like the start of it, where as he's choking Jimmy, he is becoming John G. Did I just blow your mind?
No, I mean, you've expressed it so clearly. I mean, I got nothing to add on this one.
Yeah, all my comment was just like, he chokes him just like he choked Catherine. But you said it much more eloquently than I would have.
I mean, nothing needs to be said. You got it.
And I've mentioned the commentary a little bit, and I do want to mention that this is where there is this branching commentary on the special edition DVD. And I noticed that it's actually difficult to listen to correctly if you're watching on like certain media players, because the media players, at least the one that I was using, sticks to the, title one, but the way that's branching commentary works is at a certain, like from whenever it switches, I think from track 13 to 14, it actually randomly switches to title 2, title 3, or title 4, where it finishes the rest of the movie. And titles 2, 3, and 4 have 3 very subtly different commentaries. They're like nearly identical, except one hints that Teddy is telling the truth, like in the next color part of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
One kind of hints that Teddy is lying, and one is fairly neutral about whether Teddy is lying or telling the truth. And then, but the one on the title 1 track, if you're like watching it on a computer, it actually has this moment where the commentary track slows down and then it plays the rest of the movie in reverse. And so you can't actually, actually listen to it whenever because it's all just, backwards speak for the last like 15 minutes of the movie. But I think that's kind of fascinating the way that they did that. And especially because those differences are, tend to be very subtle. So like if maybe like two people are talking about the commentary, they'll have slightly different experiences, but if they talk about it, it's like everything that he talks about is basically the same. It's just these very subtle differences. And I also wanted to talk about this location. I mentioned that the cinematography is gorgeous, like with the hallway
definitely.
scene. But it really is like a perfect location for this, like basically this murder house.
This is true. It's perfect and isolated.
Mm-hmm. And also just the decrepit nature and the plastic hanging down from the doors. It really feels like a serial killer lair.
I could see Leatherface walking around in there.
There's no steel door for him to slam, though. It's part of his whole shtick.
Yeah, and then this is really the first time that we're introduced to Jimmy Grant as a character, and he's played by Larry Holden, who is, he only has like about 30 credits, and they're all like these very minor roles.
Mm-hmm.
And various things. So, he never went on to do much, and he passed away in 2011 at the age of 50.
Oh. Yeah.
And but I think he does great as Jimmy. He has such a different look wearing the same suit and shirt as Leonard, because and I think the porn stash, I think, is doing a lot of work. The handlebar porn stash.
Entirely true.
And the mullet, too. It really gives him a much more sleazy vibe, where
Definitely.
Leonard wearing almost the exact same suit looks much more polished and put together and classy.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting you say that, because to me, Jimmy wearing it kind of looks like a scumbag, but as we talked about multiple times, Leonard, it looked a little frumpy in it because it was too big for him.
Right.
But yeah, he just, the clothes, we've seen Leonard in these clothes the entire movie, and you never thought of, sleaziness, but for some reason on Jimmy, he looks sleazy in those clothes.
Yep.
And they did actually have 2 different suits that they made, and Jimmy's is cut a lot tighter, where Leonard's is cut a lot looser. And there's also the slight difference where Jimmy wears the blue shirt collar pulled up over the top of the suit jacket.
Yeah, that's a look. That's an interesting look.
where Leonard wears it with the shirt collar tucked inside the coat.
Well,
Leonard wears it.
Leonard wears it the way a normal human wears it.
He wears it the way, a quote unquote respectable professional wears it.
I've never worn a shirt the way Jimmy wears that shirt.
Well, like, I mean,
it also feels like kind of 70s.
yeah, it's like a loser suit, this guy is definitely from a different era.
And the other thing I noticed, I just kind of saw my notes jumping around just a little bit, going back to the flashbacks, is the final flashback of I think whenever she's being choked, the actual background sound gets muted a little bit, and so we're more, as the audience, we're more into the flashback scene, and the real life scene gets muted slightly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think it's indicative of Leonard's focus.
Mm-hmm.
He's much more living in the past than he is in the present.
Right. And during this fight scene, it goes by pretty quickly, but there is this moment whenever he's choking Jimmy where Jimmy claws at his face, and that is the where the creation of the 2 scratches on his cheek come from.
Mm-hmm. Again, one of those final puzzle pieces falling into place.
Yep, it's all coming
checking off the list,
Yeah, and also going back to the whole mirrored element, I think the entire way that Leonard attacks Jimmy is the exact same way that he attacks Teddy, where he hits him and then he drags him down the hallway. And even the scene where he's choking Leonard is shot at the same angle as his fight with Teddy whenever he's holding the gun to his face. These are all shot for shot, position for position. This does have the slight, it's not exactly the same, because in this one we do get this prolonged moment of this conversation with Jimmy that we don't really get with the Teddy scene in the beginning. But the rest of it is so much beat for beat that it's almost scary. It is almost, again, like this time loop, this muscle memory, that you can tell that this is quite possibly something that he's done multiple times, that he has this method that he uses. I could see him attacking somebody the exact same way with the previous fake John G's.
Yes, he doesn't even realize it. The muscle memory is there, that when he is in this situation and it's time for him to finally kill John G, his body goes into not remote control mode, but just the standard method that his
autopilot.
That's thank you. Yeah. His body goes into autopilot, and this is how it happens.
Which is fascinating, because as far as he's concerned, this is the one and only time it's been done. So it's interesting to think about his body's muscle memory here, whereas his actual memory thinks this is the one and only time.
Yeah.
He's so good at it, and he's so capable of doing it, and he just chalks that up to the rage he's feeling.
Mm-hmm. And again, we've talked a lot about the lack of emotion, and I do think that for the most part, there is still this lack of emotion. There's really only 2 moments of anger in this whole scene. And you get one moment with kind of the initial attack, and then you have the moment with the final attack. But other than that, he comes back down to neutral pretty quickly. And I think the only other thing really that I have in this scene, which I don't really have any specific notes about it, but I do like this conversation with Jimmy. As I love the progression as Jimmy's trying to talk his way out of it, and then you can see the gear gets switched as whenever Leonard asks for him to take off his pants, and he realizes, I don't want to get blood on them.
Yeah, this is not good.
Yeah.
Well, I guess yeah, he doesn't start freaking out until we get to that point, but he has no problem when he says, take your shirt off, and he doesn't say why then. He doesn't seem to have a problem doing it then. So I'm wondering why he didn't seem to care too much when he made him take his shirt off.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Like I think he just is confused. He thinks he's going to
Mm,
steal his clothes or something. But
mm,
I think when he says, I don't want to get blood on them, is when he really is like, oh,
right,
hang on.
right.
Yeah. And, he does this great job of this, like, basically pleading for his life. And then this is where he mentions the $200,000 in the trunk of the car, at which, starts to raise some red flags. But, Leonard is too much in the moment at this point, and he's kind of too far gone that it's not enough to dissuade him from his purpose. And again, after he takes the Polaroid, he puts it back in his mouth as he starts
Hmm.
changing. And again, we get this start of him basically becoming this new John G.
Well, he's becoming the character that we have seen the whole movie now.
Yeah. And, like I do have a bit of notes for it, I think, in the next scene, but I think we can talk a little bit about it now. But do you think that he has done this with other previous John Gs? Like, do you think that the flannel suit, or I mean the flannel shirt, the vest, and the blue truck came from the previous John G?
I'm gonna say yes because I just don't see pre-accident Leonard being the kind of guy that would drive that kind of pickup truck. And so that means he picked it up at some point after the accident. And where else would he get that other than something like this, where he gets a car that he doesn't realize isn't his from some other unsavory person, especially with what we're about to find out in the next scene.
Yeah, and we talked about at the beginning that the truck is definitely not something that he had pre-incident, because he would have remembered it as his
Right.
car, because that would have been in his
Yep.
memory.
I'm still kind of stewing on the possibility. I think you're right. I think it probably is from a former John G. Because he takes on a new persona with each new set of clothes and car. And so I think that there's any number of abandoned cars and piles of clothes kind of left behind all over the place when you really start thinking about where Leonard has been and, as Teddy says, who he's become. I think that's
Yeah.
something that's really an interesting road to go down.
And I think, I feel like something else that is a good argument for this is that there is really no explanation. Like, there's no commentary on why he's changing the clothes. He's just doing it. Again, it's almost like it's part of his muscle memory that he's done this every other time. So of course he's doing it now. He's not even thinking about it. He's just doing it.
Yeah.
And then, the last thing is how this scene ends, which, again, it's mirroring the opening scene, only this time it's going in forward, and it's not in real time this time. It's sped up, so we're not looking at this Polaroid being developed for a minute and a half. Instead, it's just, sped up to a good, 5 seconds or
Yeah.
so.
The seam is so beautiful, though. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, when I show it to students, like, half of them don't even see it. They don't see the fade to color. It is the spot on perfect place for the two narratives to come together.
Yeah, and even in the commentary, Christopher Nolan mentions that a lot of people don't consciously realize the shift into
Hmm.
color. It's like, they know that something is different, but they don't catch this transition from black and white to
Yeah,
color.
I mean, like, you get partway into the next sequence, and you're like, hang on, when did this change to color? It's how it works for me with like a long tracking shot. Like, you get halfway into it before you go, wait a minute, when's the last time I saw an edit? And you start rewinding, as we film nerds do. It's the same idea.
Or also, bringing it into the present. It's a lot like, if you've seen any of these like TikTok or Instagram reels, these like short videos of somebody like doing something, and at the end of it, it's like, did you notice that my shirt is now green? Like, and it started off as blue, and they have the thing where they, visually, like, they subtly change the gradients through over the course of the entire short video, and you don't notice it, but then until it loops back around, and then you notice the color jump from like green back to blue.
Right. I mean, you're not looking for it. I mean, it's a matter of awareness, but it's not the kind of thing that people are aware of. You're focused on one thing, as this Polaroid is fading into existence, let's say, so you're not looking at the difference of the fact that we were in black and white and you go to color. I mean, England had a whole series of traffic commercials focused around this that I use with freshmen. It's about driving in traffic in the nice weather and looking out for people on bicycles or motorbikes. Because when you're in traffic, you're looking for cars. You're not looking for motorcycles or bikes. And it's this classic video of, a white team and a black team, like T-shirts, playing basketball or whatever it is. And, how many passes does the team in white make? And meanwhile, there's a bear that moonwalks through the pile of people. And it's like, and you don't see it because it says, you only see what you're looking for, and this is an exact move on that part of our brain. Like, this is stuff that psychology has studied. When you're told, look at this Polaroid, you're not looking at the color surrounding, you're not thinking about any of that. So I think it's just a brilliant use of, again, Nolan is so good at making these films, and it's more than just telling a story. It's involving the audience and thinking very precisely about what the experience is for the viewer and how to manipulate the viewer and get them to trust you completely so that you're able to jar them later with, well, you weren't looking. And I think that's just what's going on with Leonard. He thinks he's in control. He thinks he understands everything, but sorry, Leonard, you weren't looking. I think it's brilliant.
And not only that, but we've spent the last 90 to 100 minutes with very specific cuts from the black and white to color, the black and white to color.
Right.
So we're not expecting there to be this transition from black and white to color because we have not seen it done this way in this movie at any point before.
Yep.
Yeah. And that wraps up my notes. Is there anything else that either of you wanted to talk about this scene?
Nope. I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining me and for sticking with me for this entire season so far. We've got one more episode to do to wrap up this movie. And, I'm happy that we finished it, but again, sad that it's coming to an end. But I will see everybody back in just a few days, and until next time, as always, I've been Bubbawheat, and you can find me on Twitter where I'm at Bubbawheat, and you can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on all the podcatchers that you listen to, as well as anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. We also have a Facebook group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out. And that's also where you can see these the screenshots to show like how mirrored these scenes are between between him attacking Teddy and him attacking Jimmy. I will definitely share those on the Facebook group when this episode comes out. And until next time, I assume I've already told you about Memento?
Oh, only every time I see you.
Your pants too.
Why?
I don't want to get blood on them.
Whoa. Wait. Did he tell you what I was bringing?
Take your pants off!
I've got 200 grand stashed in the car. Just take it.
What?
Just take it.